Hello and welcome to the second part on sustainability accounting. In the first part, I basically explained you how I came up with sustainability accounting and what are the reasons for me to take a look at this. And today we will have an interview with an absolute expert on this topic and who will help us to understand this topic better and give us some hints and tips how to implement this in practice. But before we get started again, here the warning. If you do not agree with these things, don't use this blog post for spamming or any kind of shitstorm. That's not the aim of this, but rather having a discussion about sustainability accounting. And today I'm pleased that I found Professor Gunnar Rimmel, who helps me understanding these terms, terminologies, and things better. He also published a book about accounting for sustainability, which gives me really a kickstart on this topic. If you have not already seen this, take a look at this. And if you want to find out more about Professor Gunnar Rimmel, have a look at his business school, where he is a professor for accounting and corporate reporting. Okay, but now without further ado, let's jump to the interview that I did with him and see what he has to say to us.
Hello, my name is Gunnar Rimmel. I'm the professor for accounting and corporate reporting at Henley Business School in the UK. My subject is sustainability accounting, especially, which I've been in for the past 20 years. Recently written a book which is called Accounting for Sustainability, trying to give an overview as a textbook for students and professionals who are interested in just the basics or the universe of accounting for sustainability. So I think that's I'm working for different organizations like the European Accounting Association, which is an academic organization, especially in a stakeholder reporting group. So where we're taking tasks on from an academic point and research side to provide insight from research to organizations like IASB, the International Accounting Standards Board, or the International Integrated Reporting Council, different organizations like Global Reporting Initiative, and responding to calls, and providing input from research on this topic and collaborating with practitioners. So that's basically what I'm doing. And I'm also director of the Henley Center for Accounting Research and Practice, HARP, and trying to get then the link between practitioners and accounting scholars in the field. So that's basically who I am. And I'm working in the UK, coming from Germany, living in Sweden. So I'm a true international European.
Okay, so thank you very much. And actually, I was reading your book. It took me exactly 1.5 days.
Wow.
Because there are so many things inside that I need basically for my daily work. But there are a couple of questions open where I would like to have your support. So let's get started with my questions that I have.
Yeah.
That is okay? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the first question is, and this is basically for somebody like me who never got in touch with sustainability accounting. Can you describe in a nutshell what is sustainability accounting? Why is it important? What's new? Why do we need that?
Yes. I mean, I'm coming from the field of financial accounting, which is very regulated and standardized. So, and I think this is the hardcore and the essence of information for companies, but it always feels like this is just monetization and not really providing the context of the company. And accounting for sustainability actually started in the 50s, 60s, where companies started to dwell on sustainable issues, environmental issues, social issues, which are not captured in financial accounting. So, and this is where we can see recently through the European Union's Green Deal, for instance, that the focus is shifting because both companies and the users of information need extra information. And information as such on sustainability. Sustainability is a very vast universe. It's not as simple as I used to say, and I know that people are getting angry because it's not as simple as financial accounting. Financial accounting is very standardized. When it comes to sustainability accounting, it's very huge. It can be everything from environmental, like climate change impact, to social impact, to governance issues, to ethical questions. And I think this is basically what, from my side, which is very interesting, because this is like currently still a new page, which starts to become also regulated. This is where IFREC is working on. The European Commission has a proposal on non-financial disclosures. And I think this is where we can see that this kind of information makes sense for very many. We need to understand what is sustainability, how can companies or entities try to minimize the impact of production, or become a better player, or better social working with social impact on the society. And I think this is currently actually reflecting our current society. I mean, shifting the huge climate change and the 17 SDGs, I think we need accounting for sustainability. And there are so many different kind of frameworks that is very difficult to follow. And that's basically when we started to work on the book. We not just wanted to have a theoretical book. We wanted to show that there's a huge array of doing that. It's within the company, very practical, down at the desktop, to communication outside with the financial markets, trying to show companies that there's a positive impact on working on this if you do it correctly. I'm not talking about greenwashing, impression management, which is also, and that's the problem currently with sustainability accounting, because accounting for sustainability means we're trying to start to get kind of standards. We have very many frameworks. There are very many initiatives currently trying to somehow converge different standards, so that it might be easier for both the users and the preparers to issue this kind of information. So it's somehow a new field, but it isn't. The origins are way back 50, 60 years ago. So I think, but what we see is financial reporting is like 600 years from bookkeeping to international accounting standards. And I think what we currently see is trying to provide tools, mechanisms, guidelines for reporting for sustainability, whatever that is. It is human, it's social, it's environmental, it's a different kind of ethical, it's governance issues. So it's very huge, but somehow to try to narrow it down to a handy, not handy side, but to a practical way of reporting, so that the information can be comparable. Then that's the task we're currently working on. I think it will not be achieved within 1 or 2 years, but I think looking ahead in a glass bowl, I think it's like in the crystal ball, it's within the coming years we will see that definitely that there will be standards around which make it much more reliant on good reporting practice. So I think that we can understand the context of accounting for sustainability. So capturing sustainability with accounting tools, we can say.
Okay, cool. Okay, actually, I want to come to one of your points that you mentioned, something like, okay, we have to look for fair trade, for fair working conditions, and so on. If I have a look at that, and if I really pin it down to the business processes that I have, and also if I'm thinking that I'm in the Western world, yeah, what does this mean for the whole global society? Won't this result in a shift of economic wealth from the rich Western world to poorer countries, something like Asian countries that are currently in the development state? Or do you see such a risk where we will get economic value shifts from richer to poorer countries?
I wouldn't say risk, or yeah, we can. I'm currently working for EFAC for risking opportunities of business models and how to report it. But I think is since almost all companies are on the global value chain. So what I see is this may lead to, or this should lead to a fairer way of doing business. So which is, yes, it will be a shift in wealth, but from a large social point of view, I think, or society point of view, I think it's not what keeps the Western side out of the race. I think it's sharing means that understanding that working conditions from third parts, which will be done in Asian countries or in Africa or wherever in developing countries, I think that's improving life conditions means also good business. And I think that is talking to very many companies, I can see that, of course, there's a huge shift in understanding that just for maximizing profits, the old way of doing capitalistic view, I think from the Western world is not enough in the long run. I mean, we have very huge tasks ahead of us if we deal with climate change and all, which is associated with these kind of actions. I think we also need to educate further down the line in the entire value chain, which means production. If we have companies with employing child labor that is not appreciated by customers, should be prevented. I think we could educate. We can do that, and of course it means shift in value. But I think it's both. I think it can be a win-win situation. It can be a win situation for the Western world for having control about the production and products used down the entire value chain, and ensuring that, of course, in those developing countries too, that knowledge transfer is a key, and also to understand fairer trade is key, and pushing ethical and social standards upwards. I think that will, in the long run, following actually the 17 SDGs from the United Nations. I think starting with like preventing hunger and poverty and all, which is the sector. I think that will be beneficial for the Western world as well. So I don't see a big point or a big problem in that, but because I think we have, as a Western society or Western world, we have coped with these kind of transfers all the time. When we look back in the Industrial Revolution, I think that there should be shifts in society, should be prevented, should be improved, and I think in the long run it will be beneficial for all of us. So I think that's a, and that is where I think where accounting for sustainability actually can kick in, to make it possible to get information which is not just financial information, which is not just profit related or transaction related, but to show like how to measure impact on society, how to measure fair trade, how to measure the improvement of life conditions, all that. And these are these kind of formally called soft values, but I think it's not soft value, it's a core value. For me, it's a basic understanding that financial accounting is essential, but also the extra information from sustainability with all different kind of facets which it has, I think is necessary to understand that this will be beneficial for both companies or issuers of information and users of information, to make it comparable, understand what kind of decision you want to make. Do I want to buy this product? Is it environmentally friendly enough? Is it fair enough? And I think that we can see already. I mean, the next generation is even more on that than we are. So I think this is also a very interesting way of developing it. Yes, but it will be it will be a shift in both in economic and wealth terms, sure. But it's not. If we look at the top of the iceberg, like 10% having 90% of assets globally. I think it's, if we push it downward just to 20% and 70, it's still enough for making profit.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Interestingly, when I was reading in your book, I was reading a chapter about stock market value and sustainability accounting. And I thought, hey, well, isn't this just one part of sustainability accounting? And is it fair to make this link? So can a company really expect that if you invest in sustainability accounting, if you try to implement this, that your stock market value increases?
Yes.
Is this a too narrow picture?
No, I mean I've always been fascinated, and actually I've done a couple of papers on this kind of topic. We were looking specifically in South Africa when they introduced integrated reporting together with Diogenes Barbocardos from Essex University, who was my PhD student then. Because we want to understand, why should companies issue more information? Why should they ever bother? Because they could maximize their profits. But we then had this very interesting case of South Africa as being the first one actually making it mandatory to report on integrated issues or integrated reporting, which is basically sort of accounting for sustainability. With Mervyn King coming from the governance side, trying to improve life conditions in South Africa for workers, and forcing companies to report more on these kind of issues because they're quite costly for the government and for the country, but for companies it's just like a painful exercise. And I think by showing that and making it a legal requirement, listing requirement from the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, we started to look at before that how companies reported and after, and we actually were checking for how the market valuation has been changed, and we could see that there's a huge shift in towards upwards. So once they started to be enforced into integrated reporting, very many companies had actually a better market value development. Talking to analysts is like, of course, they have their traditional spreadsheet, but when it comes to buy, hold, and sell recommendation, there's a lot of extra information in. And of course, they're looking into how companies report on these kind of issues. So, and I think this is where we say, yes, it makes sense for companies to do that because there is a positive effect. And we can see it even stronger. I've seen lately a paper by a colleague of mine from Vienna, who is looking into the executive compensation plans shifting towards environmental and social responsibility items. So that will be even stronger. So I think the capital market has understood, and if you can see also the development of green finance, I think there's a necessity for companies to deal with these issues. If you're not doing it correctly and good, you will have much higher, you pay a much higher interest for borrowing money. And that we can see from traditional oil and gas companies who are not into, who haven't done the shift, and those companies in the oil and gas industry who started to rethink their strategy, moving away from the traditional harvesting, but towards more greener energy provider. So I think, and that's where the interesting part is, because when I talk to my kids or the younger generation, because they're very active and should all be environmentally friendly. But I think it's like the capital market is where it provides capital for company to run the business, where it can borrow to different rates, and of course, understanding green issues or sustainable issues and incorporating it into borrowing of money or into the capital market, I think makes a tremendous shift, because it forces companies then to provide this information. And this is where we see that it's also where the different frameworks start to converge, because there's a demand by capital providers from the capital market to look into that, and it's growing exponentially. So the traditional way of getting finance is like where you're just focusing basically on maximizing profits is a way. You're trying to maximize profits, and at the same time you have to have all your sustainability information at hand and showing that there's improvement. So and I think that's a much more complex and complicated world for companies nowadays than it has been like 15, 20 years ago. And I think that's where we're heading to. So so I think it will become even stronger than that.
Okay, good. In the preparation for our discussion here, I had a look actually at corporate annual reports and sustainability reports. And I had a look at some. So I was reading from, I think, Exxon, BHP Billiton, Lufthansa, and so on. And if I read this the first time, I get the feeling, well, these are the companies that are not sustainable. And I mean, why do they issue such a report? Isn't this, I think you used the term before, greenwashing. Isn't this greenwashing?
But if it would be cynical and if companies don't mean it, it would be greenwashing or impression management. And we have these kind of examples. That's where the proponents of accounting for sustainability actually say, this is just like marketing talk. There's no real facts and hard value in it, and no numbers and figures. And that is where we see it. Also, once again, I think during the past 5-10 years, we've seen, or at least when it started actually with the financial crisis, where there had been put a lot of emphasis and focus on changing the route on path the traditional accounting has been made, and any reports just focusing the shift from financial towards extra information. I think this is what we see. Of course, companies who are highly, I will not say highly polluters, but who have a business which is having a huge impact, they are forced to give this kind of information. And I think if we could choose it freely and voluntary, companies would just pick what they want to do. And that is always my argument as a coming from accounting, being a traditional accounting professor in the beginning. Of course, I would see it more regulated, because I think regulation doesn't do any harm, because most of the companies are actually already providing much more information than demanded by the legal requirements. Mm-hmm. But it's to ascertain that also those who are actually trying to not providing this information because it's voluntary, trying to force them to show that, because that improves also the position for those companies actually working with it and trying to improve their business. And I think this is what we can see from all, like when you're saying BP or Lufthansa or just like to mention, there's so many other companies, but I mean, coming from airlines, they are under threat on, is it environmental friendly to fly planes? Is it possible to offset? How are they doing this kind of carbon offsetting and all that? Is it just for showing that they're environmental friendly? I think most companies in that field actually know that their business model would be actually or is changing so much, so that they have to cope with it. And one way of coping it might be just like using tools for carbon offsetting, because they don't currently have other means. But there are also coming new technologies. I mean, if you're looking in the airline industry, like you can read the reports from both like Boeing, Airbus, and all new actors, like going, okay, probably might be flying with battery-powered engines or different engines which are not having this kind of impact. I think that's pushing innovation forward, and I think this is what I see. It's not greenwashing and it's not impression management what these companies doing. These companies are actually trying to provide information for investors and for the stakeholders, which also can be NGOs like Greenpeace, to show what has been BP done after this incident, or how they're trying to prevent incidents. I think we can see that they have learned a lot of lessons. Of course, we can always, and this is once again when I talk to the next generation, they're desperate and saying we are too slow in doing that. Which are saying yes, but it's a political process, and it's a process and development, and we really doing our best. And when it comes to see what kind of, where we have been 5 or 10 years ago and looking backwards, and we see how far we have come now. Of course, we have to look forwards to the targets we have set. And I think this is what we do. So when I look into annual reports, my question always is, okay, so they have reduced like 30% of the emissions, but how far are they away from the targets of 2030? Is it 50, 60, 70%? Is it like 10% away from the goal set? And that's where I say I would really like to see initiatives forcing companies then to show how far they have come to a certain kind of target. And if you can then compare this from all annual reports, very like a traffic light, right? Green, yellow, and red. I think nobody would invest into a company who is deep in red, and which has no plans of shifting towards becoming a yellow or green company, and that. So and I think this is where annual reports reflecting the current status quo, but also showing what kind of strategy they have. And this kind of information is that, yeah, I mean, it's not, it's a bit tricky because forward looking is always problematic. But I think showing the initiatives being taken, the investments being taken, I think that can be a good explanation for companies saying, okay, currently, we're in an investing phase where we need to update our production facilities, our way of doing business, our business models, which will be costly. It would be much easier and much more profitable not to change anything and just harvesting on what we have for the next 20 years, because that's profit maximization. But if you invest into the future to stay compatible in the future and to make profits in the future and to be a sustainable company in the future, means also that you have to show what kind of initiative you have done, how you tackle these kind of questions. Because I think companies are being asked, what are you doing? How are you facing this kind of challenging? What is like if there's coming regulatory requirements which are up? I mean, it's not coming out of the blue. You already can see European Union is starting to reshape. We're currently working on the second generation of non-financial disclosures, which means like once you enter with a set of information, you always can start to get more details. It's like financial reporting. If we go back like 20, 30 years, we didn't have any kind of notes to the accounts. Notes to the accounts is explaining extra information. So now you can see there's a vast of information to the traditional financial statements, which makes sense because you can understand what kind of issues and transactions are behind the numbers they accumulated. So and then you can still question, is it good or bad? But I think what we see is for companies when it comes to sustainability and annual reports is there's a lot of information. This is where I've said I think the initiatives are that there will be more mandatory requirements. So which means that there's a comparable set of information within both industries and across all companies, so that you can see what's the use of energy, what's the use of water, what is the pollution, how costly it is, and all that, because that can give an extra context of the company's sustainable issues, as well as you can read in between the lines how profitability in the long run will be affected, because we're not talking on the short-term positions, and I mean, you can see the long-term positions, and long-term had been couple of years ago, like 2 years. Now we're talking about beyond the normal life expectancy of a CEO. So it's like 10, 15 years. And if you plan ahead your business 10, 15 years, you have to put it into line for how companies will run in a sustainable way, which will be then inherited from one management to another. And even shifting management doesn't mean that companies are not doing it. So this is where I say yes, that we still have and we will have companies which try to greenwash, but I think it will be much more different for them to sustain this kind of information, or to just like trying to lure people into these kind of issues. I mean, it's like we can see it from financial the same. If there always will be financial scandals, because there always have been, and it would be very naive to think that the next regulation will lead to that there will be no financial scandal coming up. If companies doing this wrongdoings, and we have this in the news all the time, they will be disguised. It will be a shock to the industry. It will be sharpening of regulations, and that will always be happening. It would be naive to say it's not. And the same for environmental or sustainability information. But I think the basic set or the quality of information is improving, and that's the way of going. And I think that's why we say, yes, of course. Sometimes when I read annual reports, I say, okay, so do you really mean it, and how can I prove it? That's my next question. So I would like to see the numbers, facts, and figures. And this is where I say that I think where we have the possibility to actually, okay, where do I get this information? Wouldn't it be easier if this is a legal requirement to show, okay, so these are the grounds and basic assumptions which the company have made, and then you can question it. So and I think that's the next stage we're working on. So.
Okay, thank you. The last question that I have is basically coming back to my area. So before this discussion, we had a small exchange of information, and I said that I'm working in the IT industry, that I'm working as a consultant, and over the last couple of years, I never came across this sustainability topic in even one of my projects. So what is it? What do we need? How do we? What would you recommend a company, let's say a mid-sized company with 500-600 people, to get started with this topic?
Yeah, I mean, it's always about, it's not that the information is not available. I think when I think of IT and information systems and different kind of possible products, everything from accounting programs or bookkeeping programs to reporting programs, business information systems, I think there's so much possibilities nowadays. I mean, it's like the huge a huge array of information is available. It's just that it hasn't been connected, and I think that is what I can see. Talking to small, mid-size, and large companies is always the same. I mean, on the shop floor, if you're talking to workers, they always say, oh yeah, this is how we can improve the product, because we could, by doing this kind of changes, we could still improve the productivity of the machine, or become less energy consumption. But until it's toppling up to the top management, takes a very long time. And I know that I have been to companies where they started to say, okay, so we would like to shift focus on towards sustainability, because that's the new thing to be. And then engineers saying, yeah, but this is what we always do. We try to minimize the consumption of material. We try to minimize the use of energy. We're trying to improve the life expectancy of machinery, but you never listened. So of course is that these kind of systems have to be somehow linked together. And I think this is what we can see from at least from business information systems, that that you can integrate sustainable information. And then it's also, since there are legal requirements which probably have been hand-filled and into forms for governmental issue or issue to governmental units, I think this might be available somewhere in some place in the company which is doing this for years, but it hasn't been a requirement for management to look at it. Right, because it's like ISO certification, and you have a lot of information already in it. But if it's not integrated into the system, and automatically you can see, okay, so here we have the data, and this is how we can use the data, or you can design a new way of using data. I think that's where I would say to companies, if they're interested in that, making a round talk to from shop floor to management, and saying what kind of issues we are facing. Even salespeople from who are going around and trying to sell machinery and products, they have a very good knowledge about what customers would like to do, how this might be perceived. We can also look into upcoming new legal issues from government, which you have to face, because otherwise your product could be out of business. And of course, by linking this together, I think step by step you will create an information system which integrates sustainability from very many different aspects. And it depends on what you're doing. As I said in the beginning, sustainability is a very huge universe. So and it might not be as important for all companies to look at just one specific item, but it might be, for one company, might be more the human rights issues and labor workforce conditions, whereas environmental issues might be much more viable for other companies. I mean, if you're working into pharmaceutical testing, might be one issue, whereas when it comes to garment industry, that the chemicals inside traditional garments might be those who are problematic, or is it like organic cotton, or use of child labor, or trying to avoid child labor, and production lines, logistics, all that. So it's a huge universe, and I think this is where companies have to look at what is most important for them. Where is it like, where can you easily get the low-hanging fruits, right? Because I think that is where we can start, so they can have a positive impact in showing, okay, so we could have improved that. I know a company which had a huge production facility, and just switching from light bulbs to LED lights saved them a lot of energy. Where we just sat down with students and calculated that this actually amortized itself within 3 years, although it was like a significant way of changing, and then they're making a surplus. So and the management, oh, is it that simple? Yes, sometimes it's that simple, right? Sometimes it's very easy. If you would have talked to people on the shop floor, they could have seen that these light bulb systems are 30 years old and are consuming huge amounts of energy, which is now costly. So by reducing it, you can actually very easily, even from an economic side, showing that sustainability doesn't mean that it's much more expensive. It can be a huge potential for actually creating a more profitable company, right? And more green company, and or more environmental friendly, or social with higher social impact. I think that's the interesting part. Understanding, or starting to understand their own processes needs, of course, products also from informatics, like business systems, like probably new accounting for sustainability programs, whatever that is. I'm more working on this kind of theoretical, but from practice, I can see that they are very. Sometimes it's enough with an Excel sheet, right? Where you just try to link together what kind of information we already have. Should it be hand collected, or should it be automatized? Is it possible to retrieve it automatically? Is it possible to integrate this into your business system? Is it possible to, for instance, calculate the carbon footprint of a product? Then you need to have, or you already have this kind of data at hand. It's just like it's lying around somewhere in some corner or some desk, which hasn't been tapped into. So I think that is what I would give to all companies, not just medium or small, but also large companies, because I think that's where there's a huge potential, and they know probably best how to do it.
Okay, so thank you very much. These were all of my questions that I had. Thank you very much for your time and sharing your expertise here with my community. I found it very interesting, and I think there are many ways started with sustainability accounting. So thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for the interview. I appreciate it, and I'm happy to give more information if necessary.
So after this interview with Professor Rimmel, here again once again his contact details. And then the question is, of course, what is next? What are we going to cover in the next blog post? And here I would like to have a look at one of the accounting standards that has this GRI, where it's just one of the accounting standards that has when it comes to sustainability accounting, and I just want to get an overview of what these accounting standards mean, what areas they cover, and where we have to look out for if we want to report or create sustainability reports according to these or similar standards. Okay, but for today, that's all what I had to share. Once again, here are my contact details. If you have questions, just send me an email. Thank you very much for today, and then looking forward to seeing you in the next webcast then.